We have this incredible art backing us up. The art, in many ways, is the foundation for everything. We don't have the budget or the finances that any other project has. We don't have a team on payroll. We were a community first. And so for the first year, it was about how do we guide this ship? How do we create a platform where the community isn't just going to dissolve? And I think that was like our first mission. Our second mission was, okay, how do we build the foundations? We can eventually start creating revenue streams so that this can become sustainable. I've got this comic book that I've been working on, and I know people are probably rolling their eyes and be like, why are you making comic books? Nobody reads comic books. The majority of the IP that Hollywood is making right now are all coming from graphic novels, comic books, and things like that. Got this incredible artwork. For me as a storyteller, I've been able to create such a rich universe, such a rich story, such all of this stuff based off 576 pixels. It's 576 squares of color, and now I have an entire story that I have completely articulated and now put into like comic book form. To me, that's so cool, and I feel like that's exactly what the artist wanted, was people to take it and make it into what they saw and what they felt. That's what art is in many ways. It's one of the reasons why I think the artist stayed anonymous. As soon as he told people who he was, it wasn't going to be about the art anymore.
Hey everyone, today we have Mason, one of the leads of Genuine Undead with us. Hey Mason, how are you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for joining, Mason. So let's just get right into it. Can you just, before we get into the questions and more specifics, can you just give us a quick brief of Genuine Undead?
Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting project. Came about at the probably tail end of August 2022. It was a free mint. It was something that I actually think started minting out in July, and it just took until August to officially mint out. No one was really paying attention to it until it showed up on Icy Tools, and that's what got everybody's attention. And people were like, "Wow, look at this pixel art." That's where I joined. I think, the first day after mint out, and just saw them on Icy Tools and was like, "Oh, these are cool. Let me collect some." And there was no Discord, there was no anything really. It was just a bunch of people on Twitter Spaces that were like coming together, being like, "What is this? This is cool. Let's run this up," kind of thing. And then those conversations started to turn into action plans, and it was pretty cool. And within the first couple days, we got a Discord set up. There was some communication with the artist, and the artist basically, I would say, delivered these what we call green papers to the community, which were like his kind of reaction to the project minting out and what his kind of intention was behind creating the collection. And I think a lot of us really resonated with those green papers, because in it there was a lot about community, a lot about decentralization, a lot about really hitting kind of the emotional heartstrings as to why I think a lot of us joined Web3 and are looking for personal freedom and personal identity and agency and all those things. So I think he hit a lot of those chords with some of those green papers, and it really just stimulated a bunch of people that got together and were really passionate at the time. Excuse me. 2022, I think people were very, very disheartened too. We were in this kind of place where NFT projects had just raised a bunch of money, and now people expected like immediate results, and it's not how things work. And so I think a lot of people were feeling as though they were let down by the projects that they believed in or the founders that they believed in. And so I think the community that kind of rallied around Genuine Undead really saw this opportunity where, oh, wait, we don't need a founder. We don't need someone to tell us what to do. We can build and show Web3 what a community is really about without having someone saying, "Hey, this is what we're going to do and we're going to build a community." Instead, the community decides, "Hey, we're going to build ourselves and prove it to the space." So that's what happened. And then over the course of the last 2 years, it's been a really interesting ride, and it's been really eye-opening just to see how community is really cultivated, how it's maintained, how it changes. And I think Genuine Undead is still very much in the conversation, like all these other projects. We're not the biggest project, we're not the top 10, but we're in the conversation. And I think that says a lot considering we don't have the budget or the finances that any other project has. We don't have a team on payroll. Like no one's getting paid. No one is there really wasn't that. We were a community first. And so for the first year, it was about, all right, how do we guide this ship? How do we create a platform where the community isn't just going to dissolve? And I think that was like our first mission. And I think we did that. Our second mission was like, okay, how do we build a foundation so that we can eventually start creating revenue streams so that this can become sustainable and turn into something else, just like a lot of these other projects that you see out there. And so I think right now where Genuine Undead is, we have some of the most incredible art on the blockchain. It's 24 by 24 pixel art. It's the same grid as a CryptoPunk. But if you look at a CryptoPunk and a Genuine Undead, there's an incredible depth there. I think some people are a little adverse to it because it's skulls, but I think the more you look at the collection, the more you look at the trades, you start to really see the beauty and the complexity that this collection really offers. And I think in many ways, that's one of the reasons why it has so much longevity is that there's just so much richness in the collection. So I think right now as a community, we've really pivoted to trying to create sustainable foundations and platforms that empower our community members to go out and build things that are going to create revenue streams, create business, create opportunities that will, in our eyes, keep the project going. It's a decentralized experiment in many ways. It's not like any other project. There isn't one person that gets to say, okay, this is what we're doing. And so things take a little longer. It's definitely interesting, but it's awesome at the same time.
Wow, that's amazing. And I think you gave a perfect brief overview of the whole timeline from the free mints to about the art and how you joined the day after mint. And now obviously what you guys are doing, trying to focus on revenue streams, because obviously you guys have established yourselves as a project and a very strong community. So that's great. And I'm super glad to hear that you guys are still pushing strong. And obviously now we're coming into the bull market and stuff, and especially NFTs are heating up. You guys are, it seems like you guys are at the cusp of really breaking out and joining the, like you mentioned, top 10, top 20 projects. So that's amazing. So obviously, before we get into more details about the project, we'd love to know a little bit more about you. So could you tell me a little bit about yourself, your life before Web3, and then also how your journey in the space, in the Web3 space began?
Yeah, absolutely. I always been more on the creative side of things. Some of my life has been in like a producer role where I'm taking an idea and then trying to execute it and make it happen from a production standpoint. My earlier life before Web3, I worked in the film and entertainment industry for a long time as an associate producer, and I was a location manager for a lot of like big Netflix and HBO shows and things like that for a number of years, which again is like a lot of just production and problem solving and hey, we have this, we've got to make this happen. How do we do it? And that was a lot of my life prior to Web3. I was pursuing a career to try and tell stories. That's why I wanted to be in film and television was wanted to write stories, I wanted to produce my own stories, but obviously in order to get there, I built my career producing other people's stuff. And then COVID happened and they shut down the film industry. So I think it gave everybody a little bit of a reset. It definitely gave me a lot to think about. I came back here to New York because I was living in California for 14 plus years. So I came back to New York, took care of family for a little while, and then Hollywood ended up finding me over here, and I ended up reconnecting with a big time actor celebrity out here, and I started working for him out here, doing a lot of just production stuff on his end for the stuff that he had going on, as well as helping him get situated in his new estate and things like that. So did that, and then while I was like in the middle of that's when I found Web3, and within probably 2 months of just sitting on the sidelines and what the fuck is this? Like, what is happening here? I just threw my hands up. I was like, okay, I want to learn everything there is to learn about this. So I left my job IRL and then just went all in Web3, which was probably stupid because I didn't have a job. Web3, I didn't have a little bit of savings, but I just found it fascinating. And to me, going back to the film and entertainment industry, like I saw this opportunity where Web3 was going to disrupt that industry. You know what I mean? Like one of the reasons why we see Batman every 5 years is because they don't want to risk creating a movie and spending $300 million on an IP that nobody knows, where they have to educate you and teach you on a new IP. So why not just use an IP that you already know that you're already probably going to go see because, you probably like Batman, right? So the risk is so much lower. And with Web3, now you have these IPs that are being created with community in mind, with community already there. And so I take Genuine Undead as the perfect IP for me to get behind, start building a story, start building the relationships and the foundation. And I now already have a community where I can walk into these studios and say, look at all the engagement, look at all the interest in this. I'm already proving it without spending the millions of dollars to go and test that IP. And so for me, I saw Web3 was going to disrupt that, and I wanted to learn everything about it. Part of me definitely looks back. I know hindsight's 2020, but I probably should have had a little bit more of a mindset of, hey, let's pay more attention to crypto and making money and setting myself up because I've been in crypto since 2017. I've had plenty of opportunities to make it and, make it where I don't have to worry about money. But instead, I've always been more focused on I don't know, creating and the things that make me happy. And so I've definitely sacrificed a lot of that opportunity to pursue more of like, I want to build an IP. I want to build something that like I can say I created, where I'm channeling someone else's work or channeling something else and creating something that I can say, oh, people either hate it or they love it, but I created it. And it's like when you're in that mode of creation and that mode of producing, like that's what I'm chasing. And so that's what I'm doing in Web3. That's why I'm still here. But it's hard. It's tough because a lot of Web3 is not people like me. A lot of Web3 is people that are just here for the money, just here for the trading and all of that. And it can be a little discouraging at times when I know if I spent more energy and attention focusing on that, I could completely do that. I don't think it's beyond me. I don't feel unlucky. I don't feel like, oh, the world's whatever. It's just more of just the choices that I've made and the things that I'm focusing on. So, yeah. I look at it much more from a macro perspective of I'm looking at my position in Web3 to eventually disrupt an industry that I was a part of, more so than just crypto being like the new financial whatever. That being said, if I had more financial, I'd be able to do more. So it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And thank you so much for that in detail background. And it's obvious that, like you mentioned, you're a creative and before you were a producer. And I'm sure many of those skills, like you mentioned, being a problem solver, that really did help you. And those skills transferred over to Web3 and the position you're in now with Genuine Undead. And obviously, like you mentioned, you've taken the longer term horizon on following your passions and not just chasing money, but really trying to disrupt Web3 through your skills and through what you're doing with IP creation. So that's great. And like you mentioned, there are not many people like that in Web3. I'm sure it's very refreshing for the audience to listen to a person like you who's really in it because they
It might be annoying too, because they might prefer me just to be on stream helping them make money.
yeah, fair enough, fair enough. But yeah, I
But,
think I think I think
it's like long term. I'm looking at it long term. I'm looking at it 10, 20 years down the line. People look back and be like, oh, damn, he was committed, you
exactly.
know.
Yeah, exactly. And this will be uploaded on YouTube, so people can always come back many years later and they can see Mason talking about his passion and then hopefully succeeding with
God
that
forbid.
within 5, 10 years. Yeah. All right, perfect. Like you mentioned, just a small follow-up question. Like you mentioned that, left your job with producing and filmmaking and stuff. So completely full-time Web3 now. And is that only with Genuine Undead, or are you also doing some other
Um,
projects or stuff like that?
yeah, so basically, I don't, Genuine Undead doesn't pay me, so I don't get paid for Genuine Undead. I've made money in Web3 through freelancing, and so I have been a video editor for 20 plus years at this point. So I have an extensive skill set in editing and post-production, After Effects. I can also film and photography. So I'm just very good when it comes to creating content and all of that. So I've definitely freelanced some in Web3, not as much as I'd like, because I think part of my dilemma is I've spent And I've positioned myself as GU, and most of the freelance stuff I do, people don't know that I did it. I'm just doing it behind the background for money. I also have other freelance jobs just from people throughout my life that I still do real estate videos and different kind of videos that I'll do on the side. And then I do some other freelance work outside of Web3 to pay the bills. But right now, I'm not really being paid anything in Web3. It's something I probably should start thinking about and changing because I think people are becoming a bit more open to ambassadors and people representing more than one community, more than one company and things like that. But primarily, I've been focusing on my company. So the way that Genuine Undead works is that it's basically a community. And what we went and did is we started a company and we went and got the trademark for Genuine Undead. The company itself doesn't necessarily have any plans to become a gaming company or a streetwear company or any of that. But what it is it's empowering the community members to go and build whatever company they want, and then they can license the trademark and use it how they want. So for me, I started a company called Genuine Global with some of the members of Genuine Undead. And Genuine Global is basically focusing on bringing IP to the forefront, specifically right now through comics. So for the last year, we've been producing a full-on comic that's going to be both physical and digital. We're hoping to release it here in January and kick off this storytelling aspect of Genuine Undead. And that's a product that I'm providing and delivering. And so I've definitely been more focused there. Granted, it's a startup. I'm not making money. We haven't even put out a product yet, so there is no money coming in. But it's tough balancing trying to lead a community, running your own company, and then also thinking about should I put myself out there to go and find other avenues of revenue to bring in by representing other people in Web3. It's definitely out there, but it's also choices, just choices in time and commitment that I've got to make because the time that I go and do that, I'm taking away from the other thing. And so I think right now it's a balance. Although even having this conversation right now, I know there's opportunities out there. I pride myself, I would say, on my ability to host spaces and talk to people and really have engaging conversations. I think that's one of the things that really kickstarted Genuine Undead was we had some great spaces, some great conversations full of philosophy and history and just like very engaging stuff, in my opinion. And so I know that I have a skill set in communicating and talking to people that I could definitely monetize. I haven't done it yet, but I need to.
That's great. Yeah. And like you mentioned, you have all these skills and you also said it yourself. Projects and communities, they're more open to their team members being involved in multiple projects, not necessarily fully, but even like you mentioned, just as an ambassador and stuff like that, and just talking about it, especially things that they're interested in and projects that can help. So yeah, that's great to hear that you're thinking about all these things, and that is definitely very interesting. And I'm glad to see also that you're, even though you're full-time Web3, you're still able to use your skills from your past life and keep that to keep the bills paid and stuff, because at the end of the day, we that's something that all of us have to do. So that's great. Thank you so much for your
Yeah,
personal journey and the yeah.
I'll also just add that I also think that part of that Genuine Undead is a culmination of so many people and so many different efforts. But I think one of the things that stands out is Genuine
Mhm.
Undead production quality and all the stuff that we ever put out, just in terms of marketing materials, our events, or everything we do is just at such a high level. You go look at our videos, you go look at our GIFs, you go look at anything that has come out from us. It's always at such a high level. And to me, I pride myself on that because that's those skill sets from a past life being executed here. And then you go out and you look at some of these projects that have millions of dollars and they're not even executing at that level. And to me, I pride myself on the fact that Genuine Undead does, in many ways, represent a much higher quality product and a much higher quality type of media. So,
Definitely. 100%. Yeah, I've seen it before because obviously Genuine Undead has been there. You guys have been a project for, like you mentioned, since 2022. So you've been here for a few years already. But even just your website, you can see that how much effort you guys have put into it. And like it is definitely a very high quality website. Like many NFT projects, they just have a simple page where they just have like their team roadmap and stuff. But you guys have actually involved many things with the animations and even like the little loading thing. It's like a brain spinning around, which is extremely cool. And so, like you mentioned, your focus and the project and community's focus is to do things that are the best quality possible. And that's great to hear. And people will eventually start noticing that. And that's one differentiation that you can have. And hopefully then people start seeing that you guys are truly a set of people that have great expertise
Cool.
in all these different things. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think again, we're exponential growth, right? Because we're starting with less money, so we don't have that growth that can just be linear. We're starting like this, but eventually it goes up, and then people realize, wait, why haven't I been paying attention? And
Yeah. Perfect, perfect. Yeah. All right. So let's get into the next question. So, like you mentioned, the art and the artist, who I'm assuming is still anonymous, but he made 24 by 24 pixel art with incredible depth, like you mentioned. So, was there any communication you had with him where he talked about the inspiration for the art? Obviously, you did mention CryptoPunks, but was there anything else, like why the skulls and all that?
I the green papers are like pretty lengthy in terms, not lengthy, but there's a lot, and I'm not comfortable paraphrasing just off the top of my head, but there's several things in there. Like the depth of this collection is pretty clear. There's a lot of spiritual and ethereal and just things that are much higher thought about than your average NFT collection. There's also no bullshit trades. There's no golden skin or Pepe trade, or it's not Web3. Like it's very much derived from rich pop culture, and it's not obvious. It's not, hey, this was inspired from this. You have to read between the lines. And because we don't have contact with the artist anymore, we really don't know what it is, which in many ways has created a lot of inspiration. It's created a lot of just expression because people can take it the way that they want. He definitely communicated that Genuine Undead was meant there to unite people and show them like their ability to create something beyond, like he called it a gift. You know what I mean? He kept calling it a gift. And to me, I really see it as that because you've got this incredible artwork. For me as a storyteller, I've now been able to take some of this artwork, right? And I've been able to create such a rich universe, such a rich story, such all of this stuff based off 576 pixels. It's 576 squares of color. And now I have an entire story that I have completely articulated and now put into like comic book form. To me, that's so cool. And I feel like that's exactly what the artist wanted, was people to take it and make it into what they saw and what they felt. And to me, that's what art is in many ways. It's one of the reasons why I think the artist stayed anonymous, is because as soon as he told people who he was, it wasn't going to be about the art anymore. It was going to be about him. And I think I really respect him for that because it has always been about the art. In many ways, now it's a lot about the community just because the community has taken on such a life of its own. But the art, it still comes back to the art, and the relationship of the artist always comes back to the art. To me, I think he was well beyond his years. I think he was like a genius in terms of, I know he spent 7, 8 months doing this, meticulously putting all of these traits together. Genuine Undead is separated into two sections. There's your classic and your cyber, and classic represents the past, cyber represents the future. And he goes to acknowledge the fact that there are no GUs that represent the present because the present moment is happening right now. So you can't represent the present. And I think
Mm,
again that is very like tangible when in regards to how we look at GU and all of that. You have the future traits, you have the classic traits, but that present moment again is up to you in terms of what that's going to be. And I feel like there's a big message that the founder was really trying to stay there. He was obviously a big proponent of decentralization and trying to give power back to the people. So again, looking at the NFT space, looking at how power works in any institution, it comes top down, right? It comes from money, it comes from all of this. I think what he was trying to do is break that status quo and try to remind people that if you work together, you're just as strong as any other institution, given the fact that sure, you may not have the money right away. In time, you create enough attention, you'll make waves.
100%. And wow, thank you so much for, like you mentioned, there definitely is a lot more information in the green papers, but I think it hit many of the points and extremely interesting. And yeah, for all the listeners who want more details and want to really get into it and GU's art, make sure to dive into those green papers
Yeah,
and
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
go into our Discord, there's a thread. It's called the Founder's Statements. There's three green papers. They're boom, they're right there. You can check them out and read them. It's one of the first things you can see right when you get in our Discord. But highly recommend checking it out. Goes into the long history of this whole project and why it's so special and what it really means. Granted, I think during the meme season, I think a lot of Web3 has been more in terms of this meme culture and silliness and making fun of each other and blah, blah, blah. And I think a lot of times people look at GU and it's, oh, it's so serious. Because in many ways, like the founder was very serious. It was like a very serious philanthropical or not philanthropic, but philosophical endeavor. And I feel like that really carried through. And so I feel like it definitely attracted a lot of like thinkers and things like that. So sometimes that gets lost because I think a lot of the space really just wants like fun and memes and things like that. And we've adapted to that as well. Like one of the things that we did do is we created a platform right now within our GU. So right now, Genuine Undead, we created a DApp that allows you to upgrade your Genuine Undead to a new contract, a contract that is owned by the community, because now that it's been 2+ years, the tech has changed, right? And so we wanted to be able to adapt. We wanted to be able to continue to offer our community ability to stay together. And so we've now created this DApp that allows you to migrate to this new contract. And within this new contract, there's several features like being able to download the high quality versions of your artwork as well as an SVG, which is basically every layer, every pixel that you can move around, and you can basically create your own GUs if you wanted. But in addition to that, we also gave people the ability to essentially go out and create their own GU collections, right? And we have one test case of that already, which is called Undeads. And Undeads was created by a artist in our community named Marcus Manson. He took all 200 GU traits and then recreated them in his style, which was more of like a cute, chibi, full body version of Undeads, but it's all the same traits. And so then what we were able to do is connect that to this DApp. And now if you own a GU, you can go, don't have to, but if you want, you can go and you can mint your undeads, which is a perfect replica of your undeads, a one-to-one version, same traits, same everything, but now you have this second version and it's connected to your same token. That's a case study. But now let's say you, Ritter, you decide, hey, fucking love this. I've got this super cool style that I think GU is going to love. I'm going to go and create all 200 traits. Now you can come with this collection. You can offer it to GU. You'll get paid for the work that you do. And now GU can mint the Ritter GU version to their token and just add to their kind of photo book of awesome versions of their GU.
Wow, wow. That's amazing. And I'm super glad to hear that you gave us all these details and you talked more about how you guys adapted, because like you mentioned, obviously the Web3 space, there are two types of people, and I think there is definitely space for these two types. Like you mentioned, one is where the serious things happen and it's all about blockchain education, all that stuff. And one is like the memes, the silliness, and all that stuff, making fun of each other and all that. Yeah, I'm super glad to hear that. Obviously, the artist's intention where what was it to be a bit more serious, a bit more philosophical, and focus on that. But you guys together as a community decided and adapted, and you guys gave the community the opportunity to migrate and then play with the art, create their own art, like you mentioned, the Undeads and Mark Manson, which he created his own project, and you guys are obviously allowing people now to mint them. And that definitely is very cool because yeah, now you have this side by side. You have one which is your OG GU, another one which is like a little memeable GU, and I've
And the
actually seen yeah.
And the
Go on.
difference is it's not a separate project, right? Because for so
Yeah.
long in Web3, right, we've always seen derivatives. You have the project comes out, people are super inspired and they make a derivative, but it's a separate project, never goes anywhere, usually dies, ends up in your hidden wallet. And so for us, we didn't want that to happen. We wanted to keep people together. So by giving people the actual opportunity to actually be part of that OG token, right? And their art is actually going to be on that OG token, I think, again, keeps people together. So it's not necessarily a separate project altogether, but instead it's this growing, evolving project that you have. And yeah, it's cool. I'm a big fan to see where it goes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah.
It also,
So
it also looking in terms of collabing, in terms of other projects and stuff of that, it opens up some really cool opportunities for collabs and different things like that, where it's not just a separate thing that sits in your wallet.
100%, 100%. That's amazing that you guys are thinking of all these things and are actually able to execute. And I'm sure that your community really does appreciate that, giving them the opportunity to play with their GUs, do get their own perspective on GU and do whatever they want with their GU. So that's
I'll
amazing.
also mention undeads to the undeads point. The reason why the idea of undeads came about was because we wanted something that was a bit more memeable, something a little bit more fun. We want like the GU IP is still the GU IP. We're not trying to take away from that or try to overshadow that. But with undeads, we created a gift campaign where we created, I think, 50 gifts. Not that many compared to some of these other people, but we created 50 gifts. We have over 100 million views. And so it's just another vehicle for us to get the word out there about GU, but Undeads is a completely separate vehicle than Genuine Undead. It's completely different art, completely different vibe, completely different audience, but now we're merging them.
That's fantastic. So yeah, let's get into the next question. Like you already mentioned before that currently no one is on payroll in GU. So obviously that probably does help you guys a lot with costs. Like you mentioned, you guys made a new contract, you're doing all these different things. How are you managing those costs? Obviously after mint, and are you guys currently generating any revenue? And do you think that model is sustainable for you?
I think right now, like we've built the foundation for the revenue streams to start coming in. We also have gone out, built the LLC, we have the trademark. And so to me, the biggest revenue streams that I want to see from Genuine Undead are more of the licensing fees. I want to see companies being built like mine that are going and using the licensing fees and building products that are going to expand the ecosystem. Because again, I think the model that Genuine Undead has right now with no one on payroll, with not being like this centralized kind of view, it's very difficult to see where this is going to go. So to me right now, the way I want to see it is I would like to see Genuine Undead really focusing on empowering, getting people to pick up those licenses and create their own products. With the new contract, we have enforced royalties and things like that. Definitely will hopefully see some revenue and things coming in from that. And then in terms of strategic partnerships and investments and all of that, like we finally have the option to do that. Prior, we didn't because we weren't in control of the contract. We didn't have an LLC. We didn't have a lot of the things that you need in order to take it to the next step and scale. Now we do. And we have a lot of people that I think are experienced enough in those kind of places, have been through a lot of that to guide the community in terms of making the right decisions. But what I would like to see is more of the building out into more of the individual, into these more small groups. I want to see people go and create their different companies. And right now, I can name you 4 different companies that are under G. There's people in Italy, there's 2 or 3 in the US, there's one in Amsterdam, you know what I mean? There's a couple of companies already that are being built and are planning on like leveraging this license, which means they'll pay a licensing fee to the company and their success will generate things from there. So I would like to see that. Again, I told you about the revenue stream when it comes to creating these new collections from people to go on to this initial token. There'll be revenue that comes from there. So yeah, I think we're getting there in terms of the sustainability of it. It's a work in progress. I don't think anyone has really set up a company or an organization the way that we have yet. And so for us, it's been a very uphill battle. It's constantly moving that boulder up the hill barefoot. We're still going upward, so we haven't fallen down yet.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I think probably 99% of NFT projects they're not even able to like fathom doing all this stuff, and you guys are here actually executing it. And just through the power of the community, like you mentioned, there was no team that was backed by VCs or by millions of dollars, but you guys just rallied the community together, and you guys are obviously over the 2, 3 years that you guys have been doing things, you guys are able to already show so much for it. And there is, again, like you mentioned, so much to come with your LLC, trademark, licensing, and all those cool things. So that's
Well, I
fantastic. And
also
I'm
think about, I mean, you think about it too, right? A lot of these projects, right? They have an idea. They go to a VC. They're like, this is the IP. We're going to build a community. We're going to do this. This is why we need the money. So they're like, okay, here's the money. Now they've got to go build a community. Good luck. It's not an easy thing to do. We've done it the opposite. We built a community first, and now we're trying to build that business. But because we have everything set, and because we still have a community, and because we have 2+ years of kind of duking it out in the trenches, Now we can go to investors, we can go to VCs and say, hey, this is our IP, this is our setup. We have 2 years in the pipeline, not to mention we've been operating with no costs. So let's continue to be super low cost. Let's take money from VC, but let's still operate at a skeleton crew and let's continue to scale this up. So I think people are not really prepared for that reality because we haven't really discussed it too much, like front facing in the community. But I'll be honest, like in the back channels, there's been so much discussion about bringing in some real money to the community because that's all we're missing right now. We've got, like you mentioned, we're executing at a level that most projects can't even execute on. Not to mention, our community is one of the strongest communities out there, in my opinion, given the fact that, yeah, we're a bit of an echo chamber because we don't have as much reach as I feel like we need. But a lot of that comes from marketing and money and getting the word out there. So again, I don't think people are truly ready for the outcomes that happen once we get a little bit of funding and a little bit of support, because I think you're going to see Genuine Undead everywhere. And then that's when it's too late.
100%. Yeah. And I can just see from your face when you're just talking about it, like the excitement in your face and there's a little spark, there's like a little sparkle in your eyes. It's great to see that people like you are in the team who are so passionate and have made it your life's mission to really lead, to really be one of the leads of this project and make sure it succeeds. And I'm sure the listeners and your whole community, that really does instill a whole lot of confidence into them. And that's, like I said before, 99% of projects aren't really able to do that or don't even have the intention of doing that. So that's fantastic. And I'm great to hear that we have, glad to hear that we have projects like Genuine Undead and really at the forefront of these things. That's
Well,
fantastic.
it says it in the name, right? It says it in the name too. It's not like it's not for nothing. Genuine undead, like it says it, just think about the words. Like it's a bunch of genuine people that aren't willing to die.
100%. Yeah. Perseverance. Yep, perfect. Before we get into some different types of questions, some more general questions about the Web3 space, I just like one more question about the project. So obviously, like you mentioned, you guys have been here for 2, 3 years. And when you initially came, when Genuine Undead was initially minted out, one of the very unique things was that you guys were completely community led. And if I remember correctly, you also had some system of voting and councils and stuff like that, how you guys brought on team members and leads and all that. So if you could just give a very brief overview of how that works. And if I know you guys have some form of a constitution also with all your processes and stuff, which again I think is very unique. So the listeners would definitely, I think, find that super interesting.
Yeah, and quite honestly, it's been a process, and even a lot of the information has changed. I think the biggest lesson that I've learned is like nothing is permanent and change is the only constant. One of the things that we initially started was trying to create this council system, create different essentially departments within the community that could focus on different areas. And initially, it was very well received, and we were able to put together some like community guidelines and things like that. I'd say a couple months in, we realized that we had made a giant mistake. And that wasn't necessarily the intent behind the councils, but it was more the strategy that we went about formulating the councils blew up in our face. And the reason is because, again, you have a decentralized community, you have a bunch of people, no one's being paid. And these departments, in many ways, some things are cool, some things people want to be passionate about, some people aren't. So what happened is we ended up selecting the heads or the leaders or the representatives of these councils. And we're like, hey, we think you guys would be perfect for this role. And they agreed. And then it was like, okay, go and build the council, go figure out who wants to be a part and who's interested. And it didn't click until a couple months in, but I realized that we had made a huge mistake because what we had essentially done is like within a decentralized community, we tried to create a top-down system, right? Because we now create a bunch of leaders and then we're like, hey, go create a work group essentially. And that's not how it's going to work in a decentralized community because no one's getting paid. So no one's really incentivized to go out. No one really wants to deal with other people's bullshit. And it just blew up in our face. And what we realized is that we should have went the other way. Instead, what we should have done is started to figure out small work groups, figure out people that work really well together and start just having them work together, regardless of whatever council or whatever, blah, blah, blah it is, just task based, just different things. And through that, through people starting to work together and building relationships and starting to realize, okay, these people work great together, these people work great together. That's how we should have formed the councils. And we abolished most of the council system that you read about, I don't know, about a year or so ago, and moved more toward this system of, okay, we have what we call the CBA, which is the Community Business Associates, which is a group of volunteers who got together, got the corporation together, got the trademark together, and meet on a weekly basis just to figure out more of the legal, logistical aspects behind that. And then essentially what we've been trying to do is inspire small work groups to come in. There's a work group that really focuses more on Twitter communication and things like that. There's a work group that focuses on Nifty Island and gaming and things like that. And so it's more about finding people that doing the things that they like to do, especially because at first, like no one's being paid. So you gotta have to find individuals that like to do the things that they do, find people that they like to do it with, and then put them together. And so that's what the CBA's role has been over the last years, helping incentivize those small working groups through problem solving. People come, hey, I want to figure this out. Hey, I want to do this. How can I do this? And the CBA will be like, oh, maybe this is a good idea. Maybe you should talk to this person. Let's set up a meeting, blah, 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 blah. And so that's how the system works right now. And what this does is it creates a lot of the pressure from this centralized, oh, what is the Genuine Undead team going to deliver? And a lot of that happened with the council system. It was, again, this top-down thing. It's not what we wanted. Now we have a CBA, which again is more of a like a resource. It's more of a help resource if you need help getting something started. But the real council system is you. The real council system is you coming together, figuring out what you want to do, and finding the people that are in the community that will help you do it. Because that's been how the majority of our things get done, how the majority of the cool stuff that you see coming from our community happens is it's people talking about ideas and then saying, oh, I'd love to help you with that. Okay, great. Cool. So that's the system of how things work right now. Within recent, I'd say, weeks, we have just identified people within the community that are going to be focusing more on certain aspects that we've identified need help, need more attention. So we've spoken, I think there's nine different things that we've identified that we need to strengthen and have help with. So we've basically talked to 9 different people about, hey, we really think that you could help us figure this out. We want you to take the charge and lead on this. And so those things were announced, I'd say a week before Thanksgiving of just, hey, these are the people that are going to be focusing on these. If you have any questions, come to these people. And so that's kind of what we have right now. Again, it's super voluntary. It's super, you get in what you put out. But you have a lot of amazing people that just really believe in what this is going to be. So, it's interesting to see it continue on the path that it is.
That's incredible. And again, that's a testament to you and the community and you itself, the grit you guys have and the perseverance. And actually, like the fact that you guys are able to confront the truth and be realistic and realize that, okay, we made a mistake and now we have to adapt, we have to change things up. And I'm sure, that process in itself, changing it up and telling people who were once like these council heads or like you mentioned with the top-down approach, telling those people that, okay, we're changing it up so you will no longer have this certain designation or whatever, and then changing it all up, coming up with new processes, and like you mentioned, even with new terms, the community business associates, that in itself, I'm sure, was a pretty big challenge. And obviously you guys were able to come through it, and now you guys have the approach you've taken now has really helped you overcome those challenges, and that's fantastic to hear. And I'm glad to hear that now you guys are, like you mentioned, identified 9 key areas. You found the right people who are truly passionate about those, and they're now spearheading those certain departments or areas. That's fantastic. Yeah, now let's get into some questions that are not, genuine on that specific, more about the NFT space and the Web3 market. And I'd love to hear your perspective on that. Obviously, because like you mentioned, you've been in crypto. I think you said 2017, and obviously you've been a part of the GU team for 2-3 years now. So currently, taking into account market sentiment and all that stuff, what do you think are the biggest challenges in the NFT space, and then also particularly for creators?
I think right now, for me anyway, it's like getting out of the echo chamber. I think there's a double-edged sword of building a super strong community is that in many ways it turns in on itself and then becomes super strong. People care way too much. And it's hard to get out of that echo chamber. It's hard to communicate and show the world what is happening and all the cool things. So I think that's a big challenge for me. I think obviously that is multiplied by the fact that we don't necessarily have the funds and the cash to help mitigate that issue. I think personally for me, my biggest challenge is that I would love to be focused on everything that we've talked about today, worry free, but I still spend a good deal of my life making sure I can pay my own bills and doing things that have nothing to do with Web3 in order to survive. So I think a big part of that is if I was able to make this a full-time thing and support myself and my family and things like that, it would be a lot less challenging. But at the same time, I'm a big believer that like struggle is the fuel to greatness. And so I'm not in any way like disgruntled about my situation or anything. Like I'm grateful for the struggle. I'm grateful for the opportunity to even be in the arena at the moment. But I think for me, that's one of the biggest struggles is constantly having my mind elsewhere and worrying about other things that don't really help the cause in terms of moving some of the things that I'm working on here, moving that forward. In terms of the overall space, I think the biggest issue that the space has is this like instant gratification that we've all come to just love and accept and need. I find myself victim to it all the time, but I think this instant gratification, whether it be investing in a meme coin, investing in an NFT, investing in anything, or even just in terms of turnaround time of when people communicate, hey, we're going to deliver this. I think the expectation to have these like instant turnarounds on things has diminished a lot of, in my opinion, like the creative process because I can see people that are crumbling under that pressure and just delivering things because they feel like they need to deliver and instead of like actually taking the time to create something super quality or something that they're super proud of, they're feeling that pressure. Granted, I also see examples of people who aren't doing that and they're taking their time and they're delivering exactly what they want to deliver. But I don't know. I think for me, that creative process is it shouldn't be rushed. It shouldn't feel like, oh, you have to meet this deadline or this deadline, unless you've set that deadline for yourself, unless that's an expectation you've set for yourself. But I think the space as a whole has an expectation problem. And in many ways, it's forcing creators to take shortcuts. And I don't love that.
100%. Yeah, yeah. And like the famous saying, Rome wasn't built in a day to create something great. And like you mentioned, high quality things, definitely having that pressure of people and in Web3, I think everyone knows and everyone tweets about it that we have the attention span of a goldfish. So it definitely does put a lot of pressure on creators and teams to deliver faster and faster. Yeah, I completely agree with you. That is definitely a big challenge. Obviously, we talked about the challenges. Now let's talk about something maybe a bit more positive. What trends do you think in the NFT space that we're currently going through, or maybe that you think might be coming up, excite you the most? And how do you see the future of NFTs evolving?
I think in terms of trends, I think it's pretty obvious. I think gaming is definitely going to be a big proponent of this space. Does it excite me? Not really. Like I feel like I'm past that point in my life where I give a shit about games, but I'm excited to see liquidity and more people come into the market. I think gaming is to me the easiest bridge to cross, especially to pull up any game right now. You got skins, you got all these things that are easily put on chain. It's so easy in my head to bring millions of people to this side. I think gaming is a great bridge for that. I wouldn't say it's the most exciting thing for me, but I definitely think that's a trend that we're going to see more and more. I know it's been talked about for years, but again, it goes to my point. Rome wasn't built in a day. So, of course, it's taken a while to get to this point. I'm excited for gaming because I think, again, going into like Genuine Undead, I don't see Genuine Undead as a gaming company, but I see Genuine Undead as probably one of the richest IPs that a gaming company can utilize to become an awesome part of any game that comes out. And so I feel like I've positioned Genuine Undead very well in that regard, in terms of being open to any of these platforms or metaverses or things that come out, making sure that Genuine Undead has a rich story and IP to basically fit into these things. And so for me, I'm excited for that. In terms of what I'm most excited for, is what I'm working for is I've got this comic book that I've been working on, and I know people are probably rolling their eyes, be like, why are you making comic books? Nobody reads comic books or comic book, whatever. To me, again, going back to disruption, I think people are definitely still into comic books, whether they know it or not. The majority of the IP that Hollywood is making right now are all coming from graphic novels and comic books and things like that. And so what I would like to do is I would like to start with this Genuine Undead story, start putting that out from a physical and digital standpoint, really having people who like to collect physical comics being able to collect, but also give options for NFT people to collect comics on a digital level. And then also start to build in some really cool features into that experience from a digital level, where you're not only being able to read the comic, but you're able to interact with it. Maybe there's some certain rewards from collecting different experiences that we can build out. I don't want to say it's gaming, but I'll say it's gamified, right? And I'm really excited for that. And I think, again, pushing that idea even further is using this comic, using this digital release as like a demo, like a MVP to go out and then later raise enough money to say, hey, I want to build a straight up digital comic platform so that every comic book from now on has a digital counterpart where you can read the comic, but you can hear the sounds. There's small animations, there's small interactivities. You're still reading, but it's moving. There's things happening. And so to me, that's my bigger goal, is to eventually create this platform where comics have a brand, like a whole new life cycle.
Wow, that's definitely is just envisioning it. That definitely does seem something that would be unprecedented, and I think a lot of people would want to see that and want to, like you mentioned, with through NFTs or through physically own that. So I'm sure the listeners are definitely very excited and interested right about now. So fantastic. Thank you so much for telling us about the trends and what you are personally excited about also. So let's head over back to GU and just one or two more questions about GU, and then we'll wrap this up. So obviously, throughout the interview, it's obvious that the community is heavily involved in GU. GU is the community, right? And the community is GU. Can you run us through the process of how you guys take into consideration the community's opinion and or feedback? For example, you guys put out some deliverable or some announcement, the feedback on that, how you guys filter that, how you guys collate that, and then work on it accordingly. What's the process for that?
It's a lot. It's a lot of conversation, depending on what it is, whether it's an idea, whether it's a proposal, whether it's whatever it is. There's a couple different ways of going about it. But initially, even before we put anything into a proposal or a vote or anything like that, there's always discussions. The majority of those discussions happen in a VC. Sometimes we'll do a space if we want more eyes and ears on it, but a lot of them will just happen in the Discord. We'll make an announcement, hey, join the VC. We want to talk about some ideas. And I think a lot of people feel more comfortable in the Discord VC. It's not live, it's not being recorded, so they can go in there and share their real opinions. But there's a lot of talking. A lot. Sometimes there's a month just of discussing things before it even, like, someone has the balls to be like, I'm going to propose this, just because they want to get the feedback. They want to hear all the ideas. Sometimes that's good and bad, right? Because sometimes, especially when you have people in the community who care a lot, there's a lot of overthinking, right? And you can come up with every reason why not to do something. So it's a good and bad process. It's like I said, it takes a little while longer. It's not something that you can just snap your fingers and, okay, we're doing this. Now, in regards to some of what we talked about a little earlier about there being kind of this appointment or being these representatives who have stepped up to focus on certain areas, we've given them the ability to go and make these decisions so that we don't necessarily need to come back and have these giant proposal discussions. But that being said, they all know that there's a line. Like, if there's something that is going to truly impact or affect the community, we're going to have to talk and discuss it and all of that. So I would say the majority of that process starts with just trying to get the word out there, whether it's starting with an announcement and then doing VCs and really just trying to talk about the idea, trying to have people listen to that and have feedback. There's two channels in our Discord. One is called Construction Zone. The other one is called Questions. And those two channels are some of our most active channels because it's constantly people giving feedback, constantly people giving ideas, and constantly just this conversation of like how we can improve, how we can get better, how we can move forward. And so a lot of, I would say a lot of the feedback that you would get in some of these VCs are almost like much quicker gotten when you're interacting in these channels. And so a lot of people have been using those channels to get a lot of those opinions quicker so that they can move forward with their ideas faster. But yeah, that's the main gist of it.
Amazing, amazing. And I'm glad to hear.
The
One
other,
of this,
let me also,
yeah,
I'll
yeah.
also just, sorry, the other thing, this is one of the reasons why we have set up the system that we have set up. Like the reason why we really want to empower small groups to go out, build their own businesses and licenses the trademark is because then they can move at their own speed. With Genuine Global, my company, and with the comic and everything that we're building, I don't have to check in with anybody in Genuine Undead, right? I go at my own speed. I do everything that I need to do, and I'm able to make my decisions, which is awesome. And that's what we need because there's a reason why businesses are centralized. There's a reason why decentralized isn't everywhere. It's fucking hard. And so what we've created is now a decentralized network of centralized entities because you need that centralization, you need that organization. And so what we're trying to empower is small groups to go out and build that and do that. And so that's what I wanted to add.
That's fantastic. And I think you've got it perfectly nailed down that you're still maintaining decentralization, but you're allowing things to be centralized at some level because like you mentioned, decentralization affects things like efficacy and all that and getting things done quickly and moving at a fast pace. That's fantastic. It seems like you guys have really thought about it and put a lot of thought into it. Like most of the other things you guys do, and that I get just seen through your website and all those things, like you mentioned, doing everything at a very high level. So amazing, fantastic. And then for the last question, if they're just, this might be a little bit of a tough question because there's so many things, but if you just had to select three things, what would those three things be that you would say set your project, set Genuine Undead apart from other NFT projects?
First would be the art.
Hmm.
There's no second to none. You go find a pixel art that comes anywhere close and you won't find it. Go find a pixel art that has any type of story or pop culture woven into it with traits and just the complexity behind how the traits work and how they line up. The art itself is second to none. I think that's really what makes even the strength of the community possible is that we have this incredible art backing us up. You know what I mean? It'd be way different if this was some bullshit fucking 2D rabbit or something. I would feel like an idiot spending the amount of time that I've spent pushing this and being as supportive and building the things that I have because of the art in many ways is like the foundation for everything. So that's number one. Number two, I think, is passion. I think because of the art and because of a lot of the like history and the things that have happened along the road of Genuine Undead, there is a level of passion in GU that you won't find in any other community. And I know this for a fact because so many communities and so many founders will like that's why they have respect for me is because they know I'm not being paid. They know no one in GU is being paid yet. We're still in that conversation. We're still at this floor price that people are like, how the fuck are they doing that? You know what I mean? Like we're still at this place. And I think there's this built-in respect because of like how did they create such a passionate, like strong core community? How did that happen without the money, without the promises, without the utility and all of that? And so I think that goes in terms of our story and our history and the fact that we've been able to cultivate that passion without money, without dangling a carrot. And I don't think there's many projects that have that same strength because they had a carrot to dangle. You know what I mean? Regardless, there's strong communities out there. I'm not taking that away. I don't want to say, geez, the strongest, blah, blah, blah. But my point is, we didn't have a carrot to dangle. and we're still one of the strongest communities. And I think that makes us a threat to a lot of people. Not in a bad way, but I think a lot of people look at what we've done and are like, what the fuck? How? So that's the second thing. The third thing I would say is that I think we have one of the most fruitful artistic communities. Like our community is so full of talented artists, creators, developers, builders. And I know a lot of communities have a lot of great people, top leaders, all this stuff. But to me, I've never seen a community that has as many artists and as many things that are working in so many different facets of Web3, so many different facets. Like from a creative perspective, I don't know any other community that has the deck stacked as full as we do when it comes to creative talent. And it's been a mission of mine to try to figure out how to utilize that and empower that, nurture that, and give these creative people like a platform to create on and to deliver on. But again, when I think about that, when I think about other communities, I know they have great artists. I know there's incredible people within all these communities. But when I think about in a room, if I had to put people in a room and I had to put all the artists, all the like creators in our community in one room versus all the ones that I know in other communities, I think it would just outlive everyone. So I could be
Well,
wrong, but that's just how I feel.
and yeah, it's great to see the absolute conviction you have. And I'm sure you'd even bet on that. You'd even gamble on that. So that's fantastic. And yeah, I think those three things, like you mentioned, art, extremely passionate community, and then obviously the fact that you guys have an extremely talented community, fruitful, artistic, creative. Those are three amazing things that people can really relate to, and people can really see that, okay, these are three solid things that really set a project apart from others. So thank you so much for those. And it's tradition now at the end of the interview. What I always do is for the listeners who have listened all the way to the end to give them a little something extra. So obviously throughout the interview, you've talked about a lot of things, which you said some things that hasn't been really talked about, very publicly. But if there's anything in specific, some special alpha that you could drop to for our listeners, something that's coming up or something that you guys are talking about, that maybe hasn't been publicly announced for all the listeners who've been here till the end with us.
We definitely have a slate of partnerships coming up. Shout out to our awesome community members that have been championing that and really putting us in the forefront of working with some of the top projects out there, some of the top businesses that are coming into Web3 and getting Genuine Undead's name out there. So definitely keep an eye out for that. I would say the only alpha that I have right now is that I am shooting to release our comic in January. So keep an eye out for January because it's going to be an exciting time and you'll see my face everywhere because I will be promoting this comic every day, every hour, every minute, every second of the day. So
Fantastic, fantastic. And wow, I think that is definitely a lot of alpha. Thank you so much for that. Before we end, I'll just try and do a quick recap for all the listeners. They don't forget everything that was talked about. So obviously we started off with the brief. So you mentioned GU minted out in August 2022. It was a free mint with unmatched 2020 24 by 24 pixel art, similar to CryptoPunks with incredible depth. And then you yourself joined one day after mint out. And then organically things started coming together through spaces and all those things. People organized themselves. And then the artist delivered green paper, which the community really resonated with, things like decentralization. And he mentioned a lot of philosophical ideas in that too. And the project is obviously completely community led without a founder or designated lead. And like you mentioned, no one is on payroll, but obviously you guys are still going extremely strong. And now you're at the point where you have a solid foundation and now you're focusing on revenue streams. And then obviously you talked a little bit about yourself and your personal journey, where before Web3, you were a creative and a producer in the film and entertainment industry, moved from California to New York due to COVID, and then you found out about Web3. And then soon after, you dropped everything to deep dive into Web3 and found IP creation with community in Web3 super, super attractive as a proof of concept and thought Web3 would really disrupt that. And obviously, like you mentioned, you started your own company within GU called Genuine Global, which is bringing IP to forefront for example, through physical and digital comics, which again, you dropped some amazing alpha for the listeners. And then we also talked about the art and the green papers, which is very in-depth and open to interpretation. And the art is nothing like regular NFT art. And listeners can always find more details in the green papers, which are available in your Discord. And so another really cool fact is there are two sets of GUs. One is classic, one is cyber, but not present as we're in that currently. So you can't really encapsulate that in art. And throughout GU's journey, extremely, you guys have persevered through many challenges, adapted. And one example of that is adapting to the seriousness of the artist by allowing your community to expand through different avenues, such as new art and the new project created by Mark, which was the Undeads, which was like a full body, cute little art. And people, it's very memeable. So that's fantastic again. And then regarding post mint and how you guys are managing costs and a sustainable model and all that, you guys already have a foundation complete, and you guys have your own trademark and LLC, which is also completed. And obviously, your vision is for companies and people to license the GUIP. And then you guys can also pursue now strategic partnerships and investments and VCs as everything is under your control now because you guys migrated. And obviously, you guys have done all the groundwork. You guys went the opposite way. You guys completely created a fantastic community, a very strong community, and done all the groundwork. And now it's much easier for you to approach VCs and for them to say yes for funding and all that. And then obviously we also discussed the council system and the change from that approach from top down to now making it task based and your community business associates. And then recently identifying 9 key areas which you have found the best people for who can focus on those 9 key areas and really spearhead them. And then we also talked about the challenges in the NFT space, where you think some personal challenges would be getting out of the echo chamber when you build a strong community and surviving in real life, paying bills and doing all that, and being able to balance that with Web3. And then obviously some more general challenges for the space, which is the need for instant gratification, which hinders the creative process, as many aren't able to deliver high quality things due to the pressure created. And then some trends that really excite you is, for example, the gaming trend. You're excited for the liquidity that will come from that, the mass adoption, the more eyes that we'll get. And then also GU being an IP that gaming companies can utilize within their game. And obviously, you mentioned you're very excited for the comic book that you're coming up with that'll be distributed through NFTs and physically, and then also gamifying that. And then eventually in the future, creating a comic book platform that'll be extremely interactive and very fun for the users. And then the final questions, which we mentioned, your process and GU's process of taking the community's opinions and stuff through many conversations and VCs and spaces and proposals. And then the fact that there are pros and cons to that long process. But obviously now you guys have adapted to that also. You have 9 leaders, which will help increase the efficacy of that process while still maintaining community involvement. And then obviously just to end off, the last things you mentioned, the 3 things that really set GU apart, which is firstly the art, which is second to none, and it really enables the strength of the community. Second is your extremely passionate community that comes from the art, GU's lore, and without a carrot, aka money, to dangle in front of people. And the last thing is your extremely talented, fruitful, and artistic creative community. And yeah, I think that should be everything. I think I should have covered everything, and obviously this will be a recording, so listeners can always go back and listen to the amazing things that you have said throughout. So before we end, do you have any closing remarks, Mason?
Appreciate your time. There's a great wrap up there. Very nice.
100%. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mason. And for all the listeners, before we end, make sure to check out everything GU. So join their Discord and then obviously check out their Twitter, check out Mason's Twitter. And then if you can and you find the product interesting, buy some NFTs, join the community. And especially if you're an artist or somewhere where you think you want to build, I would really recommend their community because it's quite obvious that they're very open to builders and you can really get involved. So make sure to do that. And thank you so much, guys, for listening. This was Ritter and this is Mason. Thanks again. All right. Bye bye. Thanks.